The Doors were not just a rock band. They were a cultural phenomenon, a cry for freedom in the 1960s, a deep dive into the shadows of the human mind. With provocative music, poetic lyrics, and an almost hypnotic stage presence, the group led by Jim Morrison left a mark that spans generations. This is the complete story of one of the most intense and influential bands in the history of music. It all began in the summer of 1965 in Venice Beach, California. Jim Morrison, freshly graduated in film from the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, ran into his former classmate Ray Manzarek. Ray was a keyboardist, also a film graduate, and was impressed when Jim showed him some lyrics he had been writing. Among them was Moonlight Drive.
Let's swim to the moon.
Ray immediately said, "We have to start a band." Soon after, guitarist Robbie Krieger and drummer John Densmore joined the group. The Doors were formed. The name was inspired by the book The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley, which explores psychedelic drugs and mind expansion. It was a clear reference to the idea of opening the doors of perception through art, poetry, and music. From the start, the Doors had a unique sound. They didn't have a regular bass player. Ray played bass on the keyboard. They relied heavily on improvisation, blending rock, blues, jazz, and psychedelia. The lyrics were intense, often dark and philosophical. Jim Morrison, with his deep voice and wild behavior, would become one of the greatest frontmen in rock history. In 1966, they signed with Elektra Records and recorded their debut album, The Doors, released in January 1967. The album was recorded at Sunset Sound Recorders in Hollywood, produced by Paul A. Rothchild and mixed by Bruce Botnick, who would become a key figure in the band's subsequent albums. The album opened with Break On Through to the Other Side, an invitation to cross into another level of consciousness.
Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side.
But the real success came with Light My Fire, which topped the charts and became an instant classic. The 7-minute version, filled with solos, became a milestone of psychedelia.
Come on, baby, light my fire.
However, a radio version, about 3 minutes long, took the song to the top of the Billboard charts. Ray Manzarek's keyboard solo and evocative lyrics written by Robbie Krieger and Jim Morrison made the song a symbol of the counterculture. The album also included songs such as Soul Kitchen, The Crystal Ship, 20th Century Fox, and Alabama Song, Whiskey Bar, the latter an adaptation of a German play by Bertolt Brecht and Kurt Weill. Jim sang with a dramatic and theatrical intensity unusual in rock music at the time. This album also included tracks like The End, an 11-minute epic with theatrical, almost surreal lyrics, showcasing the band's darker and more existential side.
My only friend, the end.
The End was later used by Francis Ford Coppola in the film Apocalypse Now, cementing its legacy. With this album, the Doors not only entered the music scene with both feet in the door, but also made it clear that they were not just another rock band. They were here to provoke, challenge, and explore uncharted territories of music and the human mind. The Doors was a critical and commercial success, selling millions of copies and being acclaimed for its originality and boldness. It was the beginning of an intense, creative, and at times, self-destructive journey. Their second album, Strange Days, 1967, featured an even more psychedelic sound, with tracks like People Are Strange and When the Music's Over.
When you're strange, faces come out of the rain. When the music's over.
Was released just a few months after the first. The band was at the height of their creativity and used more sophisticated studio equipment, including one of the first Moog synthesizers. People Are Strange became one of the band's biggest hits, talking about alienation and estrangement, themes very present in the youth of the time. When the Music's Over, with its more than 10 minutes, was practically a sister of The End, mixing poetry, improvisation, and intensity. The album maintained the momentum of their debut and solidified the band's reputation as something different, unclassifiable. In 1968, they released Waiting for the Sun. It was their only album to reach #1 on the charts and included hits like Hello, I Love You, and the powerful 5 to 1.
Hello, I love you, won't you tell me your name? Hello, 5 to 1, baby.
Despite not having the track Celebration of the Lizard as planned, it was considered too long and complex to be included in its entirety. The album maintained the band's creative standard. Hello, I Love You, although a commercial success, caused controversy for allegedly plagiarizing All Day and All of the Night by the Kinks. 5 to 1 has one of Morrison's most aggressive performances and would become a reference for many hard rock and punk musicians. The Soft Parade, 1969, was their most experimental album. Pressured by the record company to produce something more accessible, the Doors added brass and strings to the arrangements. Songs like Touch Me
Come on, come on, come on, come on, now touch me, baby.
used these new elements successfully, but many fans turned their noses up at the new sound. Morrison, who was struggling with legal and health issues, took some time off from writing and recording during this period. Still, the album has interesting moments like Shaman's Blues and the title track itself, The Soft Parade.
He bought a little. Yes, he did. Oh!
An epic 9-minute journey divided into parts. Despite the criticism, these 3 albums kept the Doors in the spotlight. They showed that the band was not afraid to experiment, even if it meant moving away from their original sound. Each album was a new journey, with its ups and downs, but always with its own personality. In 1970, the Doors released Morrison Hotel, considered by many to be a triumphant return to the raw, more direct sound that fans had come to know in their early days. The album was divided into 2 sides, Hard Rock Cafe and Morrison Hotel, which reflected the duality of styles, one side more electric and the other more introspective. The album cover was photographed in a real hotel in Los Angeles and became one of the most iconic images of the band. Highlights include Roadhouse Blues,
Keep your eyes on the road, you hand upon the wheel.
a true blues rock anthem, recorded almost live, with a visceral performance by Morrison and participation of guitarist Lonnie Mack on bass. Peace Frog, with its striking beat and enigmatic lyrics, speaks of urban violence, political chaos, and Morrison's personal visions.
Dead blood in the streets, it's up to my ankles. Feet blood in the streets.
The transition from Peace Frog to Blue Sunday shows the band's talent for combining intensity and softness in a fluid way.
I found my own true love was.
Waiting for the Sun, which gives its name to the 3rd album but was only recorded here, is also a powerful track, full of tension and symbolism.
Waiting for the sun, waiting for the sun.
The following year, 1971, came L.A. Woman, the last album with Jim Morrison alive. Unlike the previous ones, the album was recorded in the band's own studio, known as The Workshop. Producer Paul Rothchild left early in the sessions, thinking the recordings were lifeless, so Bruce Botnick took over production along with the band. This gave the album a looser, more organic, almost improvised feel. L.A. Woman is a deep dive into the blues. The title track is an urban epic about the city of Los Angeles, full of raw imagery and speed.
With a little girl in a Hollywood bungalow.
Love Her Madly brought a more pop side and was one of the band's last great hits.
Don't you love her madly? Don't you need her badly?
But it was Riders on the Storm that closed the album in an almost mystical way. With thunder effects, atmospheric keyboards, and lyrics that mix the existential with the somber, the song became one of the group's greatest classics.
Riders on the storm.
During the recordings, Jim Morrison was already showing signs of physical and emotional exhaustion. He drank heavily, became more introspective, and isolated. Shortly after the album was completed, he decided to move to Paris with his partner, Pamela Corson, in search of peace and anonymity. On July 3, 1971, Jim Morrison was found dead in the bathtub of his apartment. The news shook the rock world. At just 27 years old, he joined the tragic 27 Club. Without an autopsy and with many conflicting versions, Jim's death remains shrouded in mystery to this day. Following Jim's death, the remaining members released 2 albums, Other Voices, 1971, and Full Circle, 1972. Ray and Robbie shared vocal duties, but it wasn't the same. Without Morrison, the band lost its core. In 1973, the Doors officially disbanded. Years later, the surviving members reunited for a few performances and projects. In 2002, Ray and Robbie returned to the stage as the Doors of the 21st Century, but faced lawsuits and eventually changed the name to Manzarek Krieger. Ray Manzarek passed away in 2013. Today, only Robbie Krieger and John Densmore remain, each still honoring the band's legacy in their own way. The Doors had a short career but left a lasting mark on rock music. They released only 6 albums with Jim Morrison, but each one has something to say. They blended poetry, rebellion, psychedelia, and existentialism in a way few bands ever did. Their biggest hits remain relevant to this day. Light My Fire, Riders on the Storm, Break On Through, The End, People Are Strange, Love Me Two Times, Roadhouse Blues. More than just a band, the Doors became a symbol of a generation, and even decades later, there's still something hypnotic about listening to those songs, as if we're stepping through a door into another dimension. As Jim Morrison once said, "There are things known and things unknown, and in between are the Doors."